Hi, my name is Paul Novinsky. I live in Mosinee, Wisconsin. I am an educator. I teach at the high school level, alternative education, and at risk. I've been doing that for about 3 years, and I've taught for about 33 years total.
So before I get into kind of the current situation, I'm curious if you could talk about how the populations that you work with specifically, how they were impacted in the time period when the school went virtual until you all resumed in fall. The students who needed extra services, which are the ones you're talking about, at least in California, we think that those people have been the most impacted when the schools were shut down. So I'm curious what your situation was.
Just to give you a little background, we went virtual March 18th in Mosinee, Wisconsin, as the pandemic kind of was progressing rather rapidly, much like most of the nation. What I saw from the population I deal with, the students, as you mentioned, those are the individuals that really require a lot of attention and learn in a lot of different ways and have a lot of special needs. They were devastated. It was difficult to handle the technology issue. Even though our school district, I feel, is pretty technologically advanced, it was still difficult to make sure everybody had internet, everybody could be operational. It was difficult for kids to deal, first of all, with the pandemic without a support mechanism. It was difficult for them to use the technology to try to learn. And it was probably the hardest thing I've done in 33 years of teaching. Just to be able to relate, communicate, understand. It was the first time I've really taught virtually, and a lot of teachers in my district taught virtually. So it really was a struggle to try to connect with kids. And I would tell you that it takes a special, unique individual to learn virtually. And definitely the needs of my students suffered greatly. Now, we then went into the summer. As the pandemic developed a little bit, and there was obviously possibilities of vaccinations and everything, our school district made a decision in July that we would go in person Monday, Tuesday, virtual on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. We also gave students the option to go virtual if they wanted to. At that time, we did have about 178 students out of about 640 choose the virtual option. As students struggled with the virtual option, some of them have come back. We currently have about 92 students that are virtual, and we've offered that option. So we've seen some problems. We've also had a lot of contact tracing in the beginning. We did have some issues with the virus, but our population is nowhere near the population of other schools. I would consider us to be more of a rural school than an urban school, although we struggled with a lot of issues. We issued desk shields. We had a mandatory mask implementation, much like the state of Wisconsin, and students could actually be sent home if they weren't wearing a mask for the safety of others. We did have some issues, but for the most part, I would say most students did comply with whatever the school district asked them to do. Although still, the struggle was for students to get back into the idea of in-person. In-person changed totally. Teachers weren't moving around. You weren't coming within 6 feet of a student. There was just a lack of looking at people, masks. Students sometimes couldn't understand. You couldn't understand students. Everybody was in a kind of a panic. And again, it took us a while to kind of try to get back into the in-person teaching, which I feel for a lot of students was the most beneficial. And so we struggled. About a month ago, the Wisconsin Supreme Court struck down the governor's order. And now my county is under an advisory mask. I would say we probably have at least 50% of our students wearing masks, maybe a little bit less. But that's been a bigger issue in America. You've got a group of people that feel that the pandemic really isn't a pandemic, and you've got a group of people that feel it's a very serious matter. I personally feel it's a very serious matter. I I'm a person that, wears the mask, and I believe in the mask. I've been vaccinated. So for me, it was different. But, this has been a lesson a little bit in what we preach about difference of opinions and understanding, and also telling kids and students and adults, follow the science, follow the data, know the facts rather than feelings, and make your voice heard that way.
Wow, Paul, you answered about 3 of my questions right there.
Well, then I guess I get some more.
Yeah, you totally do. So let's slow down, like kind of back up a little bit and talk about right now. You suggested that, well, you mentioned that the governor's order was overturned, right, by the Republican side of the House. Is that right?
Yes, the Republican Assembly and the Senate went to the Supreme Court, filed an appeal at the Supreme Court. According to our state constitution, the governor is able to issue an emergency order for 60 days. And the Supreme Court ruled that, yes, the governor can issue it for 60 days, and then the legislators have to pass an order, a law, some type of thing like that. And there's been a lot of debate about that in Wisconsin. And so the governor's order was basically struck down. And now for about the last 30 days, we've been under a mask mandate.
Okay, so it was struck down about a month ago.
Yes.
Okay, so here we're I'm talking to you from California. It's a completely different world in this regard. The children have returned to school for in-person education. This was their first week back in full, not even quite full days of education. And parents aren't allowed to touch the campus or even approach it. Every child has a mask on at all times, or they would be sent home. And then I talked to somebody like you, and you said, maybe a little more than half, or maybe not quite half, but so let's just say half of the students are wearing a mask. That means half of them are not wearing a mask. How does that make you feel as an educator, and how much do you feel like the state of Wisconsin has your back as an educator?
Well, it's been coming back to school in person was a very anxious moment for me. I'm an older person, obviously more at risk than other people. Luckily, I don't have any underlying issues, health issues. And I did the research. I understand the severity, how this disease spreads and what it can do to you. So even when we started this in-person thing, this was a very difficult situation for me because I wanted to be with my students. But at the same time, I also wanted to understand that this was a major risk. And we didn't do the cohorts what most people are doing, where one group would come on Monday, another group would come on Tuesday, and then you'd space out in case there was contact tracing or anything that happened. We went, actually, the entire school that wanted to go was back on Monday, back on Tuesday, virtual on Wednesday, back on Thursday, back on Friday. So the beginning of the year was a very tense moment in Mosinee High School. Just from the standpoint of even students, and some parents elected to keep their kids home and go virtual for various different reasons. A lot of teachers, some teachers retired. They retired saying, I am not going to put myself through this. I have underlying health conditions or whatever. So this was a really individually difficult decision for everybody. Now, as you well know, we really don't have unions, teacher unions in the state of Wisconsin. We do, but they're really powerless after Act 10 in 2010. So much like some other places where they could bargain as a collective unit, we are not able to do that. So it was either teach or you don't have a job.
Wait. I'd like you to talk more about, you talked about you have unions, but they're somewhat ineffective, and you referenced something in 2010. Can you go ahead and...
Yeah, in 2000, you actually interviewed me in 2010 about this. Act 10 basically was right to work and basically didn't require people to belong into a union, and also gave unions took away the ability to bargain as a collective group. School districts no longer have to bargain with any unions. And that really, obviously took some of the voice and input, I shouldn't say some, a lot of the voice and input away from educators in the state of Wisconsin.
Okay. So now, so you went back to school in the fall feeling kind of anxious. People were there with their masks. And then for the past month, the state said it was no longer mandatory. And then how, even though the state has that as their regulation, like the school district could also have a rule saying, well, here it is mandatory. So talk me through it.
We did our local county, Marathon County, issued an advisory statement saying that they highly recommend masks. Our superintendent and school district school board said they highly recommend masks also. But when you say highly recommend and you're not enforcing, obviously you're going to get, it's like saying, hey, we recommend you go the speed limit, but we're not going to give you a ticket if we don't. So that even added more anxiety, especially to those people that are very concerned about this for various reasons. So you've really got a double-edged sword. You got anxiety of coming back to school, and then you've got anxiety about the pandemic and the disease. So this has created not the best of learning environments.
Yeah. And so then, about a month ago when students started trickling into your classroom without masks, how does that make you feel and operate as an instructor? Well,
I often had talks with my students about why I was wearing a mask and why I felt it was important. And I basically tried to educate them through my point of view about what I was doing. I'm really wearing the mask for other people. Obviously, it protects me also, but I'm doing it for other people in case I ever would get the, COVID. I would not spread it to anybody else, or at least the possibility of spreading it would be reduced. And so I said, I'm wearing the mask for you. And so I think a lot of students understood that. And I think, the biggest thing I found from this pandemic is I think more students started questioning things, which I think is actually a pretty positive thing. And again, I like to always refer to, I'm a scientific person. I have a social studies degree. Science, data, those are the things that drive me. And I think when some people look at this, obviously wearing the mask was the right decision to do.
Okay. And then I'm wondering, so did that sway your students? Did they start to wear a mask, any of them?
Well, the hard part is we went from where you had to wear a mask. I mean, you could be basically told, no, to all of a sudden now, you don't have to. I have some students in my classroom that do not wear a mask. And the hard part, and this is what education is all about, is accepting those differences, trying to work around them. It's not an easy environment. You get some students that have had tension with each other because somebody does have an underlying condition and they made a choice to come to school and somebody else isn't wearing a mask. And so you have student tension, teacher student tension. It has not been the greatest of years. And I'm not going to tell you who this is, but one of my administrators and I were talking today and basically was just hoping that this year is over with and things change, because it has been such a tense environment. And even in Wisconsin, where our population is nothing compared to your population, California has put a strain on a system that was already strained.
Yeah. I did have a chance to visit Wisconsin this summer, and I was struck by how politicized masks were. It seemed like there's almost a palpable tension between people who were wearing them and who weren't. How is it today?
Well, I'll give you an example. I wear my mask out in public everywhere. Again, I'm fully vaccinated. That doesn't matter. I will walk into the store, the local store where everybody goes, and I will have my mask on. And people are looking at me like, what are you doing? And I think one has to just hold to their convictions and believe, but it has created an issue and has definitely caused a lot of attention, especially politically. The area I come from has dominantly been Republican. They voted for Donald Trump overwhelmingly in the last presidential election. And, you know, obviously there's been tension between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party just on the mask basis and on COVID. Each party has handled the pandemic way differently than the other one has. And it's unfortunate that we've taken an issue that could be life and death, or since they could be, is life and death for certain people, and we put politics into it.
And just for our listeners, can you give us a picture of the demographics of the area where you're at in terms of socioeconomically? It's a very working class community, right?
Yeah, this will sum it up. We have 2 traffic lights, stop and go lights in our town, so that'll kind of give you an idea. But we're generally rural. We do have some manufacturing industry, but we're more of a blue collar town. A lot of farming community, although we do have industry. And so again, this pandemic has taken different aspects. We did not have a lot of industry that shut down. A lot of people took precautions, but we did not go into some of the shutdown modes that other areas did.
Plugging in here. Okay. And while I have you with me, I know that Mr. Trump made a few visits to Wisconsin, and it seems that he really tried to capitalize on some of the people that you're describing, like blue collar white Americans, even if his policies might not have really benefited them. And he definitely caused people to question things like the mask, and really poked fun of it. What do you think the draw is? What do you?
Well, I'll tell you 2 things. The President Donald Trump came to our local airport and spoke twice. We even had an anti-mask protest at a place in Moseley, Wisconsin, where there was a COVID outbreak during the anti-mask rally. My personal opinion is I respect people's opinion, even though I do not agree with it. There was definitely part of the issue with the mask is when you have your political leaders and you are not following a policy that is based on science and data, this can cause a major problem. And I think this is where you get people that are so entrenched on, no, I'm not wearing a mask, and yes, I am wearing a mask. Especially when you have your leaders, some of them are making choices not to do this.
Right.
It's the same thing you see in the state of Wisconsin. Our governor has been pro-mask from the day he was elected, from the day this happened. And our Senate and House of Assembly have not. They've had many political issues about this.
Yeah, this is so intriguing. And I guess where was I going to go with this? Well, first of all, I'm sure you probably encounter this all the time, but there has been this kind of paradox or this separation, right, between I'm going to wear the mask because that's my public health thing that I can do for me and others, and like I don't have to because I'm not going to because I don't have to, it's my right. What would you say to somebody around that when they think that their personal rights are more important than the rights of maybe everybody?
Well, I personally feel that this is the thing that makes America a great country, but it also is something that definitely hurts America when people hide behind the fact that it's my right to possibly kill somebody else or spread the disease, which could kill somebody else. And it's an argument that I think I just watched in the news with Representative Ford, I think it was, and Dr. Fauci about this, talking about this, where it becomes so much of a personal, individual, selfish thing rather than thinking of my fellow people. And to me, if you want to be a patriot, if you feel you're a patriot, then that would be the thing to do, is to wear the mask even when you don't feel like you have to, or it's a law or a mandate to do it. So this has hit really to people's value system about how they treat other people, how they feel about the Constitution, how they feel about America and their individual rights. I personally don't think it is a right not to wear a mask, because I could possibly affect other people. And that's my own personal opinion.
Okay, and so one more question on this, and then one more about the population that you're working with. So I guess, what would you hope for in an ideal world? What do you need as an educator to feel more secure in your role going forward? We don't know that the pandemic is, we'd love to think it's about to end, but people who are vaccinated are still coming down with illness, and they're still figuring out the logistics of the vaccines, even as they're being administered. So we don't quite know exactly where the end of this is. So what do you hope for going forward?
Well, my personal opinion was I wish the mask mandate would have stayed in place. I wish, obviously, desk shields. Our students are still using desk shields. So we gave each student an individual desk shield so they couldn't have it really contact with other students. I think those two things definitely made educators in my district feel more comfortable teaching. I think that would be the big thing. And to me, you can't mandate it, but as many people that can get vaccinated would definitely slow the spread of this disease. We don't, science doesn't think you're going to ever get rid of COVID. It's about managing it. And I think that's, to me, would be the biggest thing that would ease the fears of people in my district, would be to manage it the way we at least were trying to manage it. We had desks 6 feet apart. We had mask mandates. We had desk shields. And I'm just fearful that we're kind of pulling back too soon. And obviously, like you saw in your state, a mass surge again. There's no data right now in Wisconsin that says that, but the potential is still there.
And I know what I was going to say when you were talking about Donald Trump earlier. I mean, he was pushing for full schools open by fall everywhere. And you mentioned that the community that you were in were very much supporters of his, by and large. Do you think that pressure from that level swayed people in the district into, opening up in fall? Because Wisconsin still had quite a few cases in fall when you all opened.
I think it definitely had an influence. Again, if your leader is telling you it's safe and you should do it, there are certain people that are definitely going to listen to that individual. And I think that definitely swayed it. My own personal opinion is I'd rather have seen what a lot of school districts did, where one group came on Monday, a different group came on Tuesday. Because if somebody in that group had the COVID, it would be easier to isolate it rather than possibly having the entire student body be exposed to it, which we did. Not the entire student body, but sometimes an entire class was wiped out. And to me, that really, wasn't scientific and logical to do it. I understand where they're coming from. They just wanted students back into the building, which I did too. I think every teacher does, but at what cost and what risk? You saw a surge in Wisconsin in September, October, and November. You saw that. And part of that was that several districts went back to school, and you had more contact with people. Businesses opened up. Restaurants opened up. Anytime with this disease, you have more contact, you have the ability for it to spread. And so I think if Wisconsin maybe would have just slowed down a little bit, I think we would have probably stopped the spread.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, the thing I don't like about this is that we've taken a major world health issue and we've turned it into political gunfire. And I just don't think that we should do that. I think people's safety and the science and the data are the thing that should be driving and should have driven our decisions. But I think what you get is we had an election. Being reelected is a major thing. Economics. We all know that if the economy isn't strong, you're possibly not going to get elected. I mean, all these things played a factor in some of these decisions, and they really shouldn't have. People's health and safety should have been the number one factor in determining what we did.
Thank you. I told you that was the last question or the last, but you reminded me of something that we were talking about right before we started recording. And that is that several times in Wisconsin, the Tavern Association has been the ones kind of who got the lawsuits in motion to get the mask mandate, taken away. And then you said, "Oh, I'm not surprised." Talk about that. Why has the Tavern Association been so powerful in Wisconsin?
Well, number one, Wisconsin consumes more alcohol than anybody per capita in the world, probably. We have breweries. The Tavern League is a very powerful institution in Wisconsin. They have a lot of money. If you go in my town, I think there's 7 taverns in a small town. And so there's a lot of influence. There's only 2 stoplights and about 7 taverns. And so it's a big cultural thing, but it's also a big economic thing. I mean, and I feel for those people because last year in March, April, May, June, July, August, they were shut down and they could only do carryout. So they economically took a major hit. But once again, and it's hard because if you're affected by your livelihood, your business, how do you put a price tag on human life? And it's tough. And sometimes some people do that. They put a price tag on what human life is. And I understand why they do it, because if they don't have money, what's life to some people? So I don't see it that way, but it definitely played a major role. I think it's playing a major role now. Part of that mask mandate was that the governor could not regulate capacity at restaurants and taverns, which if you study the data, we knew that the spread really was big in restaurants and taverns because people gather, they usually are drinking, eating, and they take their mask off. And so that was the reason the governor said, look, you're only going 25% capacity. And that's gone now. Now you're at full capacity. You can have an outdoor concert, indoor concert. You can have all that. So I'm concerned, and it hasn't happened yet. I'm concerned that in the next few weeks we might see a surge in Wisconsin. The good news is we've had a very early spring in Wisconsin, so people could get outside. And we know that getting outside is one thing that stops the spread of COVID because you can space yourself out rather than being indoors. So I think Wisconsin and the Midwest got really pretty lucky because our snow's been gone for about 4 weeks, and it never usually is. We usually have snow still now. And so I think that's going to definitely help us. But don't be surprised in the next month if you don't see a surge of COVID cases in Wisconsin.
So Governor Evers, I mean, I'm almost baffled about how he managed to be elected, given all the pushback he's getting. Is he able to, does he have any power with all this opposition that he's facing seemingly at every turn?
Well, I personally know Governor Evers. He was a teacher, knew him many, many years ago. He won Milwaukee. He won Dane County, Madison County, La Crosse. They're very popular. Wisconsin is a weird state in that Milwaukee, Madison have about half the population of Wisconsin. Then everything becomes rural. So if you look at the map, he really only won like 3 or 4 counties, but those counties were the most populated counties. And those counties also were some of the first to pass mask mandates, still have not. Dane County is finally moving back, like California, to in-person school. Milwaukee toyed with it a little bit, did it, had drawbacks. And Milwaukee really took the largest hit with deaths and COVID cases in the state of Wisconsin. So Evers has a power base there, and I think it was easier for him to be able to get some of these things or encourage local authorities to pass some of these mandates and laws.
Okay, so it makes sense. The largest areas are also some of the most diverse
Correct.
areas, and so then some of the most progressive areas. We've covered a lot. Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. And good